Now, last month, the Department of Commerce, they came out and they were telling the world, this is what Americans are spending their money on. And in the third quarter, the biggest driver of marginal spending was on car sales. Technically, if we look at it, it's motor vehicles and parts, which increased by $15.6 billion to $463.5 billion. Now, once again, that was the beginning of the third quarter. Then we had the hurricanes, and of course, they had to revise these numbers, which, again, the hurricane does not hit the entire country. It hits states, and it hits small portions of the state. And as we can see, there was a hurricane in Florida, there was one in Texas, and at this point they are saying, okay, let's revise these numbers. Here we are at the end of the third quarter. Let's revise them, and we're going to show that, well, Americans really didn't spend their money on motor vehicles. They spent their money on health insurance now. Now remember, when you purchase a car, people are not laying out $30, $40, $50, $60,000. They're borrowing this money. They're taking out loans. When they purchase health care, they're actually spending their hard-earned money. And it looks like health care, well, it took the lead. And the reason for this is because premiums skyrocketed. And remember, health care, which is also known as Obamacare, well, it contributes to GDP. And the higher the number, the better it is. And we can see that they revised motor vehicles. It looks like for that time period, it was about $109 billion. Healthcare spending was around 200 or so billion. Almost double. And we see at this point, healthcare has been leading the way in what Americans are spending their money on. They're not spending it in retail. They're not spending it on homes. They're spending it on healthcare. And this should tell you something, that we have a major problem, because, again, if we strip away healthcare, we strip away the manipulation, what's left in the GDP numbers? Absolutely nothing. Now, the corporate media, the government, they're out there telling us that pending home sales jumped the most in 8 months. And, of course, this is on the hurricane rebound. They had to show that, oh, see, look what happened. Everything is back on track. Now, of course, these pending home sales, they're manipulated, they're fake. And you're trying to tell me throughout the summer, because remember, if we go back a couple of months, 1, 2, 3, 4 months or so, we've had declining pending home sales, and all of a sudden it shoots up out of nowhere. And once again, this number is coming from the South, which is up by 7.4%. Now, remember, they've been manipulating the housing market, making us believe that everything is fine. They did this back in 2006, 2007, 2008 with the subprime securities, where, yes, everyone believed the housing market was absolutely perfect. It was going to continue on and nothing was going to change. Except when it did, and the entire market came crashing down, and many people were underwater, many people lost their homes, many foreclosures, many short sales, and people never really recovered. Now, they've pushed the bubbles in 20 different cities by manipulating certain factors, and they drove prices back up. Not for the whole country, but certain areas to make everyone believe that everything is fine. But we can see already things aren't fine, because we've been looking through all of the propaganda and we are seeing the economy is deteriorating very, very quickly. Now, Janet Yellen was out there. She was testifying in front of Congress, and once before she said that we were not going to see a crisis again in our lifetime like we saw back in 2008. Now she went a step further. And of course, everyone laughed and said, yeah, that means something's coming. Even I said this, and it does mean that something's coming. Well, she took this a step further, and she used the C word. And what I mean by the C word is that word contained. And we know that Ben Bernanke used the word contained months before we had the recession, where he said the housing, the subprime, it's all contained. So she was out there. She prepared remarks ahead of what may be her last appearance before Congress, and she came out saying that the economic expansion is increasingly broad-based across sectors as well as across much of the global economy. She expects the Fed to continue gradually raising interest rates and trimming the balance sheet. Although asset valuations are high by historical standards, overall vulnerabilities in the financial sector appear moderate, as the banking system is well capitalized and broad measures of leverage and credit growth remain contained. And once again, she just signaled that we are headed into a major disaster. Every time they go down this track where they convince us that we're not going to see a crisis, where everything is contained and everything is great, that means that we're heading into a collapse scenario, a recession, a depression. I mean, Ben Bernanke was out there assuring America and the world that we are not going to see a recession. They're forecasting one. Nothing's on their radar. Everything is contained. And in that same exact year, in the month of October, guess what? They brought the system down. All of a sudden, everything crashed. Of course, they blame this on everyone else except themselves. And of course, this was created by the central banks. It always is. Now, Russia is very worried. They understand that this system's coming down. China understands this because they're set up to be the new system. And they know what the cabal is capable of because they don't want to, release their power to someone else. And to keep the system going, what do they need? They need hard assets. And Russia is very worried. They're worried that they're going to confiscate gold reserves. And right now we can see that in a surprising, unexpected warning, Russia's finance minister cautioned Washington yesterday that if our gold and our currency reserves can be arrested, confiscated, even if such a thought exists, it would be financial terrorism. Now, the question is, why did he say this? Well, the comment appears to have been prompted by consideration of escalating U.S.-EU sanctions, which could ultimately impact Russia's offshore-held gold and reserves. If sanctions include the freezing of foreign accounts and the central bank, it would be equal to declaring financial war on Russia. And this is what Russia's worried about, because we could see that the cabal is going to become very, very desperate. And this is the central bank, the cabal in America. They're like intertwined here. And they would definitely go after hard assets like gold to back the current system that we're in today. And what we're seeing right now is other countries are warning the other central banks, the cabal, do not do this. This is not going to end well, because we have factions in the central banking system fighting each other. But the head central bank, again, they're just sitting back, they're watching, because they know that the new system is being set up, and they will be fine. And they will push their agenda forward once again. Create paper currency, put countries into debt, have complete control over the countries, steal the hard assets, put people into poverty. This is what the central bankers do. Their product is debt, and they put people, countries, corporations into as much debt as possible. This is how the system is designed. It's not supposed to be a system of debt. It's supposed to be a system of checks and balances. This is what the Founding Fathers really wanted. The central bankers, they don't want this because they don't make a profit. Remember, their corporation is privately held. And we can see right now they're preparing, and they just signaled that everything is about to end and everything is about to shift to someplace else. We're going through a reset right now. And every 40 to 45 years, there's a reset. This one is one of the biggest we've ever seen. It's the petrodollar system, which was set up back in the 70s when we came off the gold standard. We've never seen anything like this before. This is why we're seeing negative interest rates. This is why we're seeing stimulus, because they're doing all of these things because this system that we're in today never existed before like this. And they're trying to keep it going as best they possibly can because they don't want to be blamed for the system to come down, because if it does come down, guess what? They're going to be blamed. If there's no event, if there's no distraction, the central bank will be blamed for everything. And that means this will filter all the way back up to the main central bank, and people will say, well, wait a minute. If you caused this catastrophe, why in the world would we want you to start a new system? It makes no sense. You couldn't even run the other system. We shouldn't trust you with this new system. This is why they need to distract. This is why they need something out there to say it's not their fault. And this is what they've been planning. This is what they've been prepared for. And this is why you need to be prepared, because the day is coming. They're letting out little breadcrumbs, letting you know that things are definitely in motion. Everything is ready to go, and they're counting down to the time when they bring the system down. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.